What did I do to get here?
Welcome to Life in Focus with Bill Pine. And today's topic is about something called the Manosphere. Right, but see, my problem with the Manosphere, right, is that when you talk about the Manosphere, there's both good and evil.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you just like you may have what the man we talked about before, preaching good, teaching good. You have someone on there who's teaching evil.
How are they teaching evil if they speaking on what they doing evil?
Okay,
But there's different groups within it too.
well, that's exactly something that he just said it. You got the different groups within it. Go ahead, finish.
So even if you just focus on, like, I don't know if you could put it back up, but like the men's rights activists, that by itself is not bad, right? It's talking about men having rights when they go to family court because they historically lose when they go to court, family court with custody and things like that. They're not winning, but that's, I mean, you.
Well, I know a man who took his ex to court, and now he has the children.
Right, but we always got to identify.
So changing that,
we
right?
got to identify what's the majority, like you said, the norm, right?
We
got to always identify that. And so I think the men's rights is okay, right? The incels, I think that's weird, personally. You know, shaming women or blaming women. I just don't like the whole victim mentality.
So is the Manosphere like a...
It's like a sphere.
So it's not
like
a
an
group.
atmosphere.
It's an ideology more so. It's not like I can join. Like
it's like a mechanism. Think of it like a mechanism. Like you got the internet, right? So you got the Manosphere, right?
I look at it like the atmosphere, right? There's a bunch of stuff in the atmosphere,
right?
You know, you got the clouds, you got the air, you got
so
water.
So like feminism. Would you say?
Right.
It's the opposite of feminism, Manosphere.
It is anti-feminism in some ways.
Okay.
So in some ways, and sometimes it's pro. And what I mean by that is this. Manosphere is so broad. All it means is anything at all that would draw a man's interest.
Yeah, and I looked a little bit,
Anything at all that would draw.
So for example, you have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Who's your podcast geared toward?
Everybody.
Good, but does it attract men?
It attracts both men and women.
Right, but it attracts men, right?
Yeah, but
so it would be considered part of the Manosphere.
But he's saying it attracts women too, though.
Yeah,
it's still attract, but anything that attracts men would be part of.
Like I could do a reaction, like for example, I could do a reaction video about a female, like the female who kids just died in the car that they said froze to death, and then the next day she had a party getting drunk on live, drinking and cussing in the camera, shaking her booty and stuff.
Yeah.
So my opinion of that.
Is that the type of mourning now?
That's what I'm saying. So it's like my opinion of that is that making me a manosphere, or if I say, well, what happened to our modern women today?
No, what makes it a manosphere is the fact that you attract men to your podcast.
But that attract women because I get a lot of. If I do feedback like that, it works both ways because I can talk about a rapper,
but see,
and the man to try to come defend the rapper.
Think of it like numbers, all right? Like you have unions. If you guys are familiar with the idea of unions and numbers, let's say, for example, all prime numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7. And let's say your number must be 5. You're a number, you're an odd number, and you're also a primary number. So you can be more than one thing.
So what would you call like a Kevin Samuels then? Because he had more women.
Manosphere for sure.
He had
it's
more
Manosphere for sure, right?
He had more women than men on his. He attract more women to his podcast.
So this is what it says from ChatGPT. It says core themes: critiques of feminism and modern gender roles, discussions on male identity and masculinity, dating and relationship advice, often from a red pill perspective, men's rights issues, family court, false accusations, custody battles. And so we bring up Kevin Samuels, right? To me, it seemed like he was educating women on how to get a man and the type of man they should be looking for.
I agree.
Right?
Okay.
And let's call it education.
Okay.
Right?
I got a question about that though.
Yeah.
Was it done from a Christian perspective or a worldly perspective?
It was certainly worldly.
I don't even think it was worldly.
I think it was worldly.
The reason I say that is because when you have these sensitive topics, we have to remove our emotions and feelings out of it. And I think a lot of people listen with their feelings and emotions and they miss the whole logic of what he's saying. Like if he asks a woman how much she weighs, people will get offended. She'll get offended off that. But logically, he's being right. Like you got to get fit. You got to lose a couple pounds. Now, the way he say it might not be
the best way
to say it, but that was the show. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think you could probably find the Christian value within it, but on the surface, asking somebody, you make $100,000.
Oh yeah,
you know, so boom, I remember he talking about a man like, how are you in bed? Like that's not necessarily the Christian value. The weight of a woman may not be. I mean, you could talk about maybe, body is a temple, how you keep up with yourself. Maybe you could try to find a stretch, but it's just not
50-50. He has some good principles, but he has some off.
But okay, that was
I got a question for each one of you.
Yeah.
Would you let your son
I agree, though.
just go on the internet in this whole manosphere atmosphere where you have all these different things out there, both good and bad, and just let him go? Or
No, I think my actions speak louder than words, and I think I'm way more influential if I'm in the home, right? I think that's a big thing, right? And that curves a lot.
But would you let him just go out there and be privy to these podcasts?
Well, I think so. I'm always hoping that my son will be better than I am. And so if I'm a devout preacher, he's going to be even, 10
he's 10
times
years old.
Right. So, he's 13 now. So I would say,
let's say 13. Yeah. So would you just let him go out there and
I wouldn't give him a phone.
Yeah. So you got to, you know what I'm saying?
I ain't my first phone until I was 17.
See, same here. You see what I'm saying? So I think for me, I'm comfortable where my son is at with, his age and his development and things like that. But
what I'm saying though is, would you give him free reign, or would you offer him guidance
and make
no free reign?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be irresponsible to just give him, free reign to the computer system. But I will say with the, Manosphere, it seemed like I'm just reading a little bit about it, and not to get too deep into politics, but it talks about following Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 U.S. president election, the Associated Press reported that an emboldened Manosphere used Trump's win to justify and amplify misogynistic derision and threats online, and that it was no longer an online phenomenon. And I think some people are using it to try to justify why Donald Trump won and the other person he was going against lost. They were saying, well, because, Kamala's a woman. And so I don't credit it to that, right? I think it's deeper than that. I don't think that's the reason why. I think just generally right is right and wrong is wrong. Right. And I think that, whether you call it Manosphere or whatever, sin is sin, right? And so I think it's taking Manosphere out of it, just judge somebody by the character, right? Judge somebody whether they're woman or man, right? Whether you are extreme left on the feminist side or extreme right on the right side, you should look
at everybody according to the word of God.
Yeah. But I wouldn't want a woman to be the president either.
Okay.
Why would you not want a woman to be president?
Mm-hmm. Would you let a woman be the head of the church?
That's different.
Also,
that's different. One is to me, the church is different than the government, right? I have a lot of, I can go through all kinds of things, and even in the Bible where it talks about women being head of state.
I just think a woman too emotional to run to be the president. How can you govern over?
To be frank with you, I've seen men just as emotional as women. And to me, I've seen on both sides where a guy could not hold it together, or women could, and I've seen times where women could not hold it together and men could.
Let me ask you this: when you see that emotional man, would you say that he is being the man that you would say an ideal man, someone who's overly emotional?
I would not hold that against him. I would not hold that against him.
I would say no. I would say as a man, you kind of must be controlled in some ways with your emotions. You can't let your emotions overrun you. You do have to have that logic. I do believe that God placed us with that ability to have that logic, to have that temper, so that we can lead in difficult situations.
I would say, but it's not wrong with emotions, though.
There's nothing wrong with emotions.
Jesus,
we all have emotions.
Cat and nines, or when they were money changes in the temple, he was like, man, boom.
You had an example in the Bible where it talked about where Jesus, which says Jesus wept. Yeah. Right? He cried.
So there were emotions, right?
I was talking about different kinds of emotions.
So that's what I want to kind of address.
So,
I think.
Well, what did he tell Adam? Because you listened to your wife.
Right. Yeah. You think he was emotional and caved into it.
But think about it like this: when people ego, they get emotional and they attack. You go to war sometimes. It may not even be logical. When you get in a fight sometimes, it might be your emotions. And so it doesn't mean you necessarily being weak. Right?
Correct.
Even if you get in a fight, you could be emotional.
Right.
That's why I said I would not hold it against the man.
Because someone says something,
emotional.
the wrong thing to you, you could let your emotions get the best of you. And so it's not necessarily, and that might not even be considered weak. Right? But at the same time, as a man, you do have to know how to control your emotions because you have to know how to control your power.
And that's a learn. That's something that's learned. Like Paul said, he learned. Paul specifically said he had to learn. Just like when he was Saul, he had to learn not to be a Saul, but to be a Paul. That's why his name was changed. Once he learned, he was no longer Saul, but he was Paul.
Yeah. Both genders got to learn.
So
we both got to learn, but like,
but see, this is where I have an issue with some of the things on the web. Now we're going back to the Manosphere. Is the fact that who's teaching?
Internet, the rappers, the movies, the news.
Now
the media.
We're on the same page on that one. Right. But that's not who should be teaching your child. That's not who you should be going to for counsel.
That's why
I was giving the phone. That goes back to why I said. I mean, because the algorithm feeds off all negativity. Yeah. The algorithm, you could be on, if you're on the internet all day.
So then from what I'm hearing then, from the people sitting at this table, half of the information on that manosphere you are against. At least half.
Yeah, I say half. I say half. I think it's a 50-50.
I think it's about 50-50
because
too.
I'm against anything that's putting me against women.
Right.
I don't think that's a Christian value. Attacking them. And,
if what you just told me, then you are going against those guys who get in there talking about, ain't no black woman can do this for me, do that for me, and dogging out women. You are against that.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I mean, you got to use discernment.
Right. I understand that, but what I'm trying to tell you is these people got large following.
But you got to think about who's following them. Generally, it's people like you just said, the incels, people who've been rejected. Right, people who can't do certain things. Generally, it's people who've lost. Right. Okay, and the thing that we talk about Donald Trump, he appealed to people who feel like they've lost, whether they lost the country, they lost their community, they lost this, and so they feel like